which have taken place in the UK. I mean, each of those deaths was, I'm sure, properly investigated at the time, but there are now calls for the whole list to be looked at again to see if there are other signs of Russian foul play there.
What is likely to happen over the next 24 hours, and how crucial are the next few hours in this?
Well, as you probably know, we gave the Russians an ultimatum that they had to come back to us with some satisfactory explanation of how these materials had fallen into the wrong hands at best by midnight tonight. But the statements of the Russians so far make it pretty clear that they're not going to respond in a helpful way. And this goes back to my own experience dealing with the Litvinenko case back in 2006, where we had exactly the same runaround from the Russians, where they said, we'll help to investigate, give us this, that, and the other fact. But frankly, they were very obviously not going to cooperate. At that point, the British government is going to make a decision about sanctions, and I suspect that we're gearing up to hear about those sanctions tomorrow.
What kind of options are on the table?
Well, there are various options, and again, I go back to my Litvinenko experience. The most obvious set of things to do is to make life much more difficult for Russian intelligence agents operating in London. A fair number of those are actually on the books of the Russian embassy, so that I suspect there will be a string of diplomatic expulsions, which is a bit tough on my colleagues in the British Embassy in Moscow, who will take the brunt of the Russian retaliation. There will be further tougher constraints on our contacts with those agencies and on their travel to and from the UK. So that's one set of issues. Another set of issues is the fact that a lot of dirty money, and in particular dirty Russian money, is washing around in the city and elsewhere here. And we've already taken some measures to tighten up on controls on that sort of thing. We have things called unexpected wealth orders, which enable us to confiscate wealth which cannot be satisfactorily explained. So I imagine they will be used against big Russians with Kremlin links who have property or so on in London. And in addition, under discussion here in the UK at the moment is a thing called the Magnitsky Clause, which is a law which would enable us to be tougher on violators of human rights. And again, that will be usable to be tough on the Russians. So there are various sanctions of that sort designed to make life much less comfortable for rich Russians and for the agencies in London. And in addition, as again you probably heard, there are questions about official representation at the Moscow World Cup and things like that. Taking all of those things together, the main aim of whatever package is produced will be to say to the Russians, it is not worth your doing this sort of thing. That was our aim at the time of the Litvinenko case, and I'm sure that the package worked out will be tougher than we agreed on in Litvinenko, but obviously didn't work. Things are as bad as anyone has ever known them, including people who were around at the time of the Cold War.
That's the UK ambassador to Russia, the former UK ambassador to Russia, Sir Tony Brenton. It's 21 minutes past 8.
The head of Robinson Helicopter Flight Safety is in New Zealand to meet aviation regulators after the Conservation Department banned its staff from flying in some Robinson helicopters because of safety concerns. 5 other government agencies have suspended the use of Robinsons, while the aircraft are on the Transport Accident Investigation Commission Safety Watch List. Bob Muse is the Director of Flight Safety at Robinson Helicopter Company, and he's meeting the Commission today. He's stopped by to talk with us. Good morning to you.
Good morning. Good morning to you, sir.
So you're on a watch list by the Commission. Do you think that that is justified?
Well, we weren't very happy with it, but I would say that as a result of that watch list, some very good things have taken place. A lot of awareness was put on flight safety, accidents, training, and there have been very positive things that came from the watch list, but we really don't believe that it was needed for us to be put on a watch list.
So are you hoping that that will be lifted as a result of today's meeting?
My hopes today's meeting with Take, who we have the greatest respect for, who we think do an excellent job in their role in the aviation industry, is to share new information with them, things that we've been working on, that they specifically requested in the watch list.
Yes, have you complied with all those things that are on the watch list? I'm just looking at it now, looked at a number of things that they wanted the CAA to do. You've talked about some of them, the awareness and training, special safety awareness training for the pilots as well. But there's particular concern about what they are calling mast bumping. This is contact between the inner part of the rotor blade or a rotor hub and the main rotor shaft, and it can lead to the thing breaking up in flight, which is obviously pretty catastrophic if it happens, indeed fatal for those on board. So what have you done to ensure that risk is minimised?
Well, we looked at what was occurring down in New Zealand, and if you look at the take accident report that they put together, the number is 13-005. You would see in that Take, not Robinson, but Take pointed out that there were pilots in New Zealand who were practicing and demonstrating in-flight maneuvers that are prohibited in our aircraft. Take goes on to say, of particular concern are reports of demonstrations that amount to experimentation. We know this was going on, and the CAA also identified it, and we started working aggressively to educate pilots and train them and to the hazards of doing these maneuvers.
Okay, because in short then, and sorry to interrupt there, but that's important because you're saying effectively it's the pilot's fault, not the aircraft.
Absolutely, that is our belief.
Mm-hmm. Nothing wrong with the helicopter at all.
We believe that our aircraft is extremely safe and it's well designed, and it's very important that pilots fly any helicopter within the design limitation of the aircraft. But I think it's important to say too, there are hundreds, thousands of New Zealand helicopter pilots who are great pilots who have done everything right. But there is a culture in New Zealand, not that Robinson has pointed out, but Take and the CAA. They've pointed it out that it's occurred in other helicopter accidents.
Explain to me, because, I'm as far from an expert about helicopter safety as you could get, but how could pilot error lead to mast bumping?
By the wrong control inputs if you experience a low G condition.
So that is purely on the technique of the pilot and nothing at all to do with the structure or operational capability of the chopper.
Any two-bladed rotor systems on helicopters are susceptible to low G mass bumping. And when you become a helicopter pilot, you have to go through a series of testing standards, and you're educated to this, and it's something that all pilots who fly two-bladed rotor systems are aware of.
Have you been placed on a watch list by any other country in a similar kind of watchdog situation to this?
No.
Nowhere in the world?
Nowhere in the world. You know, we make, I'm sure you're aware, we make the number one selling helicopter in the world, civilian helicopter. Our fleet of helicopters have flown over 35 million flight hours worldwide. If there was a design issue or a flaw in it, it would absolutely be right in our face. Any helicopter accident where loss of life occurs is beyond tragic. It happens to all the manufacturers of helicopters, and we take it to heart, and we do everything we can to look at the cause of that and see what we can do to prevent it from happening again, either by education, training, or even design change of an aircraft.
But you see, the Civil Aviation Authority in New Zealand has investigated 14 fatal Robinson crashes right back to 1991. Now, I'm just wondering, given the time elapsed since then, why more hasn't been done by your company, given the reputational issues, quite apart from the tragic circumstances for the people and the families, to do more on alerting pilots to this issue, if that indeed is the problem. I mean, you've had a few decades.
Oh, we have. I mean, if you really take a fair look at it, and if you see everything we've done and the information we put out and how we work with aviation authorities, that goes on behind the scenes that you may never see.
Okay, so what are your chances then of getting off the watch list, do you think?
I believe it's pretty good. You asked me earlier, do we implement or comply with everything in the watch list? And I'm here today to tell you that we have. We have done everything that the watch list has called out for, and we are going to be meeting with Take and update them on that. And we're hoping they will look at it and see that the watch list has served its purpose and it's no longer needed.
Hey, thank you very much for your time. Do appreciate it.
I really appreciate you giving me the opportunity to come in and speak with you.
Thank you. Bob Muse there. He's the Director of Flight Safety at Robinson Helicopter, and they're meeting with Take today, the Commission for Transport Accident Investigations. It's 28 minutes past 8.
Wellingtonians want more tunnels in the city and light rail introduced to make the journey across town and